like 15 times in a row here.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, hey.
This is gonna be fun.
It is. I've been trying to study here the last couple hours while I'm watching football. I noticed one thing. I love Amicus much more than I love Hammer.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I'm Mr. Amicus here. Well, I just when I go over the movies, it's just like, I guess Amicus just was more dark edge to me. I mean, different type of thing. They're both cool, of course.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
Well, when we get started, we'll talk about obviously each, our individual films we'll talk, but definitely they were kings of anthology horror for sure. So
absolutely. I was reading about some stuff I didn't even know about them. Like a lot of movies that weren't even Amicus, like they sort of somehow they got like put to Amicus. For example, what was the one I was just looking at before we came here? Oh, The Tales That Witness Madness, which was another anthology.
Huh.
And it wasn't. I thought it was Amicus the whole time, but it wasn't Amicus. It was I think it was Paramount, and they somehow Amicus got connected to it. Same with Monster Club. You remember that with Vincent Price?
Oh yeah.
You guys remember that?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because it's not Amicus, but for some reason they're connected here. And this isn't this isn't just people typing it in saying, oh yeah, that's Amicus. But I just try to keep up with all this shit because there's so many movies. For me, Hammer, I get confused with all the friggin' Draculas.
yeah. They have a lot of the Dracula and Frankenstein movies, tons of them.
But I definitely, I'm looking forward to it too, guys.
Excellent. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Right. Making sure I got everything right. Am I all right? Am I cockeyed? If I'm not cockeyed, then I'm not right.
Yeah. It's brighter than the last time we saw you too. Last time you came in, we didn't have the light, so you kind of got darker as the show progressed.
That's always important.
Yeah. Well, I try to encourage that for ChopTop too, but it hasn't worked so far.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have pretty good eyesight. It's just long distance for me.
Yeah, sure.
Like if I take them off now and you guys are only like fucking 18 inches from the screen in my head and I still can't see it. So it's something.
Okay. Well, you're welcome. So
Look at these two mugs. Come on, kid.
That's right. Yeah.
Let me take these glasses back off.
Yeah, you're gonna wish you were nearsighted.
I'm gonna keep my eyes closed the whole time.
Talking about you, Montag.
That's right. Hey, I embrace it. I embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. Yeah. No. That's I totally get it, man. That's cool. That's good. Well, hey, you were all here. We might as well get into it. I've got my list of Hammer films. I got my list of Amicus, and I know ChopTop's got some show and tell that he wants to provide.
I couldn't dig up my DVDs in time. Unfortunately, I don't know where if they're in another drawer or another. But I do know a lot of the titles.
I'd have to go. I'd have to walk around the room for me. You see back here, but it goes all the way around the friggin' room.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
So you got the weekend plans all ready to go. Yeah.
Right now we're getting ready to go on tour, so me and my wife are putting together like 200 shirts. My drummer's like, man, make sure they fit. We need 2 boxes of fucking 200 shirts. I'm like, ain't happening, dude. Ain't happening. I'm like gonna cut if I cut them in half. We tried to bag them up. We were gonna like air shrink them into like hefty little sandwichy bags.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the air shrinking, and we tried to do it, and for some reason it's bigger, takes more space than if you just lay them all out, across like without just a full shirt. So I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah. So Deceased is hitting the road.
That and watching football.
Yeah. So how big's the tour?
It's 10 shows. In 11 days. It's weird. We're touring with Bulldozer, who's coming over from Italy. They're over right now. They're actually playing tonight in Atlanta. That's where our drummer puts on that Mass Destruction Fest. It's like them and Hyrax is there and Deicide and all kinds of fucking bands. But he needed like a day or two after the fest to get all the shit back from the fest of the gear and stuff. So we couldn't go with Bulldozer immediately. So the first 2 shows, it's with Aries Kingdom and a band called Despiser. And then they're staying on the whole tour too, but we're gonna be like the support slot starting in Philly Thursday, and then we're gonna go 10 days. But Bulldozer, like the main guy's he's like 65 years old. He doesn't want to play every night. He wants to take days off. I'm like, look, if I'm going out, we're fucking playing on off days. So we got everything lined up, and then they wanted to do something on the Friday when we were going into Canada for 3 shows, and we came out of it, and then they decided they didn't want to do it last minute, so it's so late. So we're going to be sitting at a hotel on a Friday on tour, which you both would know. That's like, besides Saturday, that's the best day of the week to play a show.
Yeah, weekend. Everyone's free. They got to get out
because they just took too long to decide. And I told my drummer the whole time, let's just book it. And if they play, they play. If not, and he's like, oh, it's a big deal because the money's different. So we got one day without them in Montreal. They're not going to play. And then we've got one day where we're all fucking sitting watching Three's Company reruns.
Nice.
This might be the best day of the tour.
Yeah, hey, as long as Chrissy's on there, you can hey, a lot of jerk off. It's time to just get a few extra clean socks and you'll be ready to rock and roll.
Project Chrissy.
That's right. That's it. That is it. Oh, that's cool. That's excellent. So what other cities are you coming to?
We're doing let's see, we're doing Philly, we're doing Manhattan, we're doing Boston, we're doing Quebec. I think it's Quebec, Ottawa, and Montreal. And we're coming out of there. We're doing Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, nice.
And then we're doing Detroit, Reggie's in Chicago, and then Indiana. Those 10, that's the 10 things in 11 days or something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of travel, man.
I mean, I think last time I talked to you guys, we had just done a lot of these same states with Accused, but they wanted to go, and I wanted to go see them. I love Bulldozer, and we haven't been in Canada since 2006, so it was time to go back in there.
Yeah,
so we'll do this, get through the year, then we'll regroup, and we'll do a whole bunch of shit in 2023. I watched some of your. I one night I was on YouTube, and I ended up you guys thing, and I saw some of the Carl Sanders where he was telling a story about getting electrocuted.
Yeah.
On stage. I was fucking laughing at that.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I tried to. I mean, when my wife goes to bed, I'm sitting there with a 75-inch TV screen, and I'm like, what do I want to watch? And you got the 200 channel cable, and you're like, there ain't nothing fucking on this thing.
Yeah.
So I YouTube it, and I can be 1 minute learning about all the fucking solar system. Next minute I'm watching Carl Sanders electrocute himself talking about it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine us on a 6-foot screen. I'm like, that's not unpleasant.
It was as gruesome as you think.
Yeah, I shrink the picture down. It's like about this big on my computer screen because I know what my face looks like. I don't want to see it any bigger.
Why do you think I use my cell phone for a show?
Exactly. It's like there's a reason I don't have mirrors in my house. It's like
that's great.
All right. Well, hey man, we're gonna do our intro, and then we'll get right to this.
Cool beans.
All right.
You're listening to Heavy Metal Horror. This is Vanek of Vanek and Midnight and Vandalus and many others. See you soon.
I am Montag, master of illusion. What goes up must come down, but not always.
Hey, this is ChopTop, keeping heavy and horrific.
And you are watching and listening to Heavy Metal Horror. Oh, kitties. We've got a great show. We want to welcome back King Fowley to the show. King, welcome back, man.
Oh, hi everyone.
And King is joining us for a very special show. Tonight, we're going to talk about Hammer films and Amicus films, some of our favorite long-lasting movies. These are movies that go back to my childhood. I think all of our childhood. We're all monster kids. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So, King, we were talking before the show, and you said, you liked Amicus more than Hammer. I didn't discover Amicus really until I was a little older, because my earliest memories are some of the Hammer films, and those are just indelible into my head. And I've come away feeling, I like both. They're both kind of different animals to me.
Absolutely.
Hammer has more the traditional, like they were really doing essentially
Gothic.
That was the Gothic horror. Yeah, they were redoing the Universal kind of monsters, but they also did the really great science fiction. With like X the Unknown, the Quatermass Experiment, and Quatermass in the Pit. That was really the inspiration for like X-Files.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah, the Quatermass was like when they really started getting into that, the sci-fi horror stuff. I think it was one of the lead-off films of Hammer, like getting there. I know they started in like the 30s with that. and they kind of moved up or something. But I know I was reading it, that was like pretty much the first ones before the Draculas and stuff.
Yeah, and on Quatermass in the Pit was the first one I remember seeing, and then not until I was in my 20s did I see the Quatermass Experiment and Quatermass 2 and X the Unknown, because I thought, oh my god, I was watching this like, oh, it's it's the X-Files. I mean, I could totally see where Chris Carter got the inspiration between that and Kolchak, the Night Stalker, for the X-Files. But the earliest memory, I think we'll start with that. Earliest memories of these movies for me, I was probably 4 or 5. And I think the earliest memory was from Horror of Dracula. There's a scene where Dracula makes his appearance, and who was Renfield? No, not Renfield. Harker shows up, and he like looks up at Dracula, and he just makes his appearance, and there's this kind of big swell of music, and he's looking down like menacingly, and he just starts walking down, and you see the look of horror on Harker's face. That just terrified the fuck out of me as a delicate 5-year-old or 4-year-old.
Right.
And now it's so tame, but at the time, and that has stuck with me, is like, and when I finally saw that movie again as an adult, those feelings came back like, oh, there's the scene. Oh my God, that's the same fucking scene. I remember that, but I couldn't tear myself away. Anything that had a, monster, and then Christopher Lee, as Dracula was just awesome.
Dracula ever.
Yeah. So
for me.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think, King, when you go back, when you think about these Hammer and Amicus films, what's the first one that you remember?
I was trying to think of this earlier, actually. I think for me, it came from the Creature Feature, our local ghost host kind of guy. I was a kid, and I was probably, I'm going to say I was probably about 6 or 7. And my mom used to tell me, we're going to watch, the guy's name was Count Gore Duvall.
Yeah.
That was our guy in DC. Okay. Big, still around, still crazy, wild man. He did a lot of stuff on the channel. Anyway, my mom used to say, if you want to stay up and watch TV, and I was only like 6, 7 years old. She's like, if you want to stay up and watch TV, you want to see this movie called Night of the Living Dead. She's like, I'm sure they're going to play it. It's always on the Creature Feature. So I'd stay up and watch Creature Feature. And I can remember seeing stuff like Circus of Horrors, if you remember that, which is, unrelated, but that's the earliest stuff. And I kept asking my mom, where's this Night of the Living Dead? Because weeks would go by. And how I think the first thing I remember was seeing was Vampire Circus.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was I remember the creepy little midget guy, the short guy. He was so freaky in it. And to this day, and I was going over this earlier when I was looking at all the movies, I think that's still my favorite a Hammer piece from them is that one. And I just remember it being like freaking me out because it was like they were so like it was a circus, and I was a kid, so I was like, well, why is the circus bad? And I just seen the Circus of Horrors, and now I'm watching the Vampire Circus. I'm like, why is there all these movies about creepy circuses? And that's kind of my first thing. And I just remember the Vampire Circus being, as you guys probably know, it's one of the more violent Hammer movies. It's more blood than most of them. It's not your goth kind of thing. It's definitely, it's sharp. And I loved it. And I just remember just being a kid and it gave me like, I guess the EBGBs, you want to call it, the willies.
Yeah, that came out in 1971.
It was about, I was thinking, 71. It was probably about 70. I'm going to say 75 when I saw that. So I guess that's my first recollection. And I was born in 68. So I was about 7.
Okay. How about you, Chop? Your earliest Hammer memory?
Recollection. My earliest has to be, I was probably 4 or 5, somewhere in between there. And I always spent a lot of time down at my grandfather's, and he just lived down the road from us. So just walking distance, and he took me fish, did a lot of other stuff. But remember one time I was laying down or just relaxed watching him. I was taking a nap, I think, supposed to. Grandpa was tired. He was taking a nap. And I remember Horror of Dracula came out as the first taste I ever had of Hammer, and scared the bejesus out of me at first. But I was just the presence of Christopher Lee, just that scene where when he looks back, I think at Harker or whatever, after he gets that one of his vampire brides, she tries to attack Harker. And he looks back and his eyes are just total blood-filled, bloodshot. And he's got that little bit of blood on the side of it. It's like, man, that's a shirt. I mean, that was indelible. It made such an impression on me. And it's very nostalgic even to this day whenever I see that film, just because of great memories with my grandpa. So
nice.
Horror.
Yeah, and Hammer did what was so great. Oh, sorry, King.
No. I was just going to say, when you both talking about Christopher Lee, that was definitely the face of the franchise, so to speak. As a kid, I probably actually saw those pictures of him from those films, not knowing, if we're going by a movie situation. But I remember seeing like horror books and things like that because my aunt was really into that kind of stuff. And I do remember seeing, especially the picture of Christopher Lee with the bloodshot eyes. And that's a classic picture. It is.
Yeah. Oh, because as a kid, I used to get the famous Monsters of Filmland. I think my mom gingerly, hesitantly bought it for me because she didn't want my head full of that stuff, but she couldn't stop it, because that's what I was going to watch, because we had enough horror hosts for Friday and Saturday, horror movies all the time. And Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, those names are synonymous with Hammer, and I love learning about their real life history and their friendship, as they went, because they made so many movies together.
Sure.
And Christopher Lee, his performance in all the roles, even though Horror of Dracula was the first one I remember, the one that just made me fall in love with these movies was Curse of Frankenstein. And that's the one I remember. And I think part of it because it was a retelling. I mean, I had seen Frankenstein as a kid. I loved the Universal stuff. It's what Hammer did was take these Universal monsters and make them more realistic in a way, or give them blood. There's these Universal was fairly bloodless, if not every bit bloodless.
The Frankenstein looked great in Curse of Frankenstein.
It
was neat. It was kind of like, you didn't feel like it was from 100 years ago anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the Victorian era made it look more plausible, look closer to what he was in the novel, and just the I was fascinated at learning Victor's life story, like from a young person and learning to become this doctor. I thought it just suckered me and pulled me right in,
cool.
And so that movie, and then seeing blood, I think for the first time, on TV, like whether he had the eyeballs like in the beaker of liquid or whatever it was just like, and I was just fascinated of seeing like these eyeballs just on their own. I'm like, I remember like drawing them. I'm sure my parents were like, "Oh man, what's wrong with this kid?"
And again, we're also seeing those characters in color for the first time, really.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to touch on too. Talk about color. I mean, the vibrancy, the color behind those films, and it still looks fresh today.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Hammer films.
It's velvety. The word is velvety to me. I don't know why you come up with that, but it's really cool. And that's what I meant by like they don't seem as old, because those Universal just seem like they were made 100 million years ago compared to stuff that we know now they're in the 50s and early 60s. These Hammer ones we're talking about, but they still seem way more up to our era than the ones that are like grandfather saw. I was at Dracula in 31. Love them for what they are, but it definitely. Sure. Like you said, showed the blood, brought out just the ghoulishness of it all, the details.
Yeah, and they took the time to develop the story. They're a little bit longer. The movie's a little bit longer, so there's more time to develop the story, and it has its own deliberate pacing. And I think now we're in a much faster paced world, and some of these movies feel a lot slower than they used to as we were kids. But when you're in the mood for it, you enjoy the journey. I can't imagine a better horror movie, to make you feel like nostalgic, like you're 10 years old again, than popping in a Hammer film, and all the Hammer films. I mean, the not only the Frankenstein, Curse of Frankenstein, and the Dracula, one for me that stands out, maybe my favorite Christopher Lee role is The Mummy, 1958. Or 59, excuse me. Yeah, The Mummy, to me, that one still like scares me. Like it is so spooky when he comes out of the swamp, just all still wrapped and lunging and lurching, and you see this silhouette, just emerging from the swamp, all wet. I'm like, fuck! It is still gives me creeps and chills.
Another great scene too, Montag, when he breaks an institution, kills Peter Cushing's father. It's like, and he's just climbing through and there's no escape, and he just deliberately goes down. He's like, comes at him and just, it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, what was terrible?
Maybe the best mummy. Well, I can't say best mummy. We got to put Karloff in the discussion maybe for another thing. But he just, Christopher Lee carried that character just so.
That was one I wanted to go back and watch before we did this, because I know last time talking with Montag that that you were really into the Mummy. And I've never been a big Mummy guy, but it's not that I didn't like him so much. I just haven't seen a lot. It's like, I guess, down the list of things I want to see. But I have them all in here. And I was telling my wife, I'm going to sit down and watch them. I didn't get to. And I really want to see them just because I've seen a few. All kinds outside the thing, from the newer ones to the older things, the Mummy's Tomb, the Mummy Shroud, things like that. Abbott and Costello, Meet the Mummy. But I want to sit down to the Mummy with Christopher Lee, because I know it's kick ass. I just know he can't do no wrong.
No, it is so good. And I think what you were talking about, Chop, that scene with the asylum, what I found most terrifying is that the Mummy supernaturally knew where the guy was. It's not like someone drew a map, he has a GPS. The guy says, go get him, and the Mummy just knows where he fucking is. And to me, to my 6-year-old sensibilities, that's what scared the shit out of me. It's like, look, the Mummy is slow, you can't fucking stop him, he knows where you're at, and he can break the fucking steel bars and get in to kill you. So I'm like, I would have these nightmares. I'm like, okay, the Mummy is like a mile away. I have to go. How far can I go before he like finally catches up to me? Like, what do I have to do to escape the Mummy? Well,
then even a great sequel after this, of course, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, Montag. That was fantastic too.
Yeah. I really like that one as well, because there's a scene. It's not Christopher Lee as the Mummy, but I remember Chop and I watched this together. We have these. We don't have many more because of the COVID, but we used to have these events fairly often. We called Stink Bowl King, where we would get together and watch great or bad horror movies all day and try to make the most obnoxiously gas producing foods we could, and it just became like chili with sauerkraut or spaghetti, smoked cigars. And so for 12 hours or 15 hours, we would just sit there and just watch great horror movies, and just eat too much and, just have a blast. And so
I'm looking, as we talk tonight, I'm going to go back to these. I told my wife before we did this, I said, I'm going to talk to these guys, and I want to learn some stuff myself, because like I said, Hammer for me is always taken secondary to Amicus, but I've seen some of this stuff and I definitely know it. I couldn't go into detail with it, but it's a learning for me, because I want to go back. I want to take all these movies, because I'm looking at the filmography of all this stuff, and one of the ones I've seen a couple of times that I really liked, I was looking at a minute ago, The Night Creatures with Peter Cushing. Well, I love the glow in the dark skeleton horses. To me, that's one of the coolest things ever. And that goes back to me in my book fair in elementary school. It was a horror movies book, and it had Christopher Lee on the cover, come with the bloodshot eyes, with the leaves, whatever that was around them, the shroud of leaves, I guess it was, or I can't know what that is. But if you took the book cover off, which I did as a kid, underneath it there was the book, and the book had the Night Creature glow in the dark skeletons horses, and it blew me away. Then I remember getting the movie, and I was like, oh my god, this is one of my favorite. It's just the visual of that. So I know there's stuff in there between that, the Plague of the Zombies walking up the hill, there's things like that just stick with you. I don't want to go through all of it right here, give it all away, but it's just so cool. And I need to go back to that, because being that I have a bazillion horror movies of all kinds of stuff from the all over the spectrum and all over the years, I gotta respectfully go back and go through these. And after we do this, I will. I got a couple days to tour. I might watch 3 or 4 of them tomorrow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
No sauerkraut though.
No. Well, I put it in the chili. You never know it was there. It just gives a nice acidic tang. But no, I totally get it. So yeah, we watched it, and I won't spoil anything, because I think there's part of it. There's a couple scenes that were just like so effectively shot, and they stand out. As like, oh, okay, this is the true horror here. And some of them aren't very good. That's what I noticed. The same with both Amicus and horror. They have some things that just don't work well, but as a whole, I mean, when you movies like, after the Mummy, I look at some of the Dracula films. They're got some good ones, and then toward the end of the series weren't as effective, with Dracula 72 AD and Satanic Rites of Dracula.
That was the psychedelic one, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Psychedelic.
Yeah.
Acid trip.
Let's put a music.
Yeah, they had this fucking party going on that lasted way too damn long.
Yeah, it's like the deer hunter or something like that. It's just like, okay, we have an hour long party. Where's the vampire? No.
coattailing that, Montag, I think out of franchises, I think Hammer, their longest runnings were the Dracula and the Frankenstein.
Yeah, they have like 4 mummy movies, I think, but like for the Dracula and Frankenstein, I mean, Frankenstein had like 7, and the same thing with Dracula, 7 or 8, and it just kind of petered out at the end. They just weren't as effective, as the ones that were set in Victorian. But I appreciate that they were still making horror,
Right. One of my favorite films out of the Hammer vampire films is Brides of Dracula. Now, it wasn't Christopher Lee, but man, what a fantastic performance by Peter Cushing. I remember the windmill scene at the end where that's how he gets Dracula, kills him and stuff. It's just so well written, so well done. And I just thought out of, their entire catalog, that's one that really sticks out well for me as well. I really love Brides of Dracula. So
yeah. And I think when they were pushing also, one thing other than seeing blood and screen for the first time to my very young, impressionable eyes, Hammer also brought something else that made me very excited to watch. Yes, the rather cleavage. First time I was like seeing ample bosom and cleavage. I'm like, oh,
the Hammer babes,
vampire lovers.
Yeah, the vampire lovers, and like the Dracula movies always had these, the girls with the low gowns, and they were always
evil.
yeah, and it's like I'm like, oh. Well, this is fantastic. This is
starting
is great.
To feel funny.
Yeah, I'm feeling funny
there.
Yeah, down there. Yeah, and
they had the most beautiful actresses, beautiful women in those Hammer films. It's like, stunning.
Oh yeah. Beautiful. So I was just like totally enamored. I also remember what movie it was, but there was a scene because I only saw it the one time. But they were take a vampire. It was a woman. Of course she's got the cleavage, so he had to put the stake down. I remember hitting the stake and like a spout of blood came up, like you could see it like gush out of the coffin. I'm like, like I was like 10. I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm not used to seeing blood gushing like that in a movie, so I'm still looking for that out there. But
another one that showed, I'm sorry, Montag, another one that showed a lot of blood was Prince of Darkness, the second, I think, of the Dracula series.
Yeah, and
remember, he's got that guy hanging over to Dracula's coffin, and cuts his throat, and it's like all this tomato paste just keeps dumping from that into that coffin to revive Dracula. And I'm like, holy shit, that was vibrant and bloody and more gore than you've seen in our very young lives at that point. So that sticks out to me as
quite gruesome. Quite gruesome. And as horror fans, that certainly was like the most gore you were going to see, for me anyway.
Right.
Because I wouldn't probably go see that. It was on a fresh set and good gory, but they did more and other really good, like better than some of their franchise films. When I think of movies like the Gorgon and the Reptile, the Gorgon is just that velvety, as you say. The sets are just gorgeous, and then then you got Barbara Shelley. Come on. I mean, she was in quite a few of these Hammer films. I mean, she's just stunning, just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Gorgon is one of those movies that is self-contained. Again, we have Peter Cushing, but it tells a wonderful story. It has the Hammer look and the pacing. Like time it's on.
Did you say Peter Cushing? Glad you brought up the Gorgon, but he is. In all the Frankensteins, he's an asshole as the doctor, and he's an asshole as that Dr. Nat that you're referring to. But he played it so well. It's almost like you had to have either Lee or Cushing in any given Hammer film, because man, they made the brand. They really did. And I think he almost got typecasted as far as with that Dr. Frankenstein, because he did so many sequels and everything. But man, you kind of like, he's a real scumbag, but you couldn't help it just because of how he carried himself and such an actor in a role that you're glued to the set, right? So, he was all like that in the Gorgon as that Dr. Namarov as well. Very vile. You kind of like, God, this guy's a jerk. Man. It's like,
yeah, definitely. Do you like those other non-Dracula Hammer films too? Are you familiar with those as well, King?
Yeah, I love all that stuff. I was thinking, for me, I like a lot of the shocker ones too. Like I was just looking at the Psychopath. Or wasn't there one called the Scream of Fear? This is one I remember as a kid too, because we had this local ABC channel that played all this stuff. I'm trying to look it up to make sure I'm not telling you the wrong thing, but I think it was called Scream of Fear. Does that ring a bell with you?
I'm looking
guys?
at my list here. Let's see. Scream of Fear. Was that a Hammer?
That's what I'm
Or
trying
was
to
that
find out. I
Amicus?
think it was Scream of
Let's
Fear. Here
see.
we go. Also known as Taste of Fear.
Okay.
And it's not telling me completely if it is or not. Susan Sarandon, 1961. Christopher Lee. Susan Strasberg. I'm sorry, not Sarandon.
Scream of Fear. Oh yeah, Taste of Fear. Yeah, I see it. Right.
Taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite ones. This is the one where the lady was in the wheelchair and she comes back to her father's estate after 10 years. And although she's told he's away, she keeps seeing his dead body on the estate. Now I know I'm moving this away from where you're just for with the Gorgon and all that.
But this is still a ghost story.
These are the ones I love. Like this and The Psychopath was another one.
Yeah.
Those were freaky. Those were like your psycho of the time, your mentally ill kind of stuff. I really got to those and I got lucky because again, they didn't play. I don't know if it was because they were saying Dracula was a dated character in the late 70s when I was watching these on TV, but they would play these other ones. They would play the Scream of Taste of Fear or Psychopath on there. And I remember them being Hammer because I'd watch and I'd be like, why the hell is this Hammer? I was like, I always associated Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, doing it, that kind of stuff. And it blew me away. So those are the ones I like to go to. And I've rewatched those quite a few times. And I didn't want to confuse them because AIP did a lot of them too, which is outside the thing.
Right.
They all kind of floated on the same wavelength, so to speak.
Psycho made such a indelible impression in our film. Like this was just Hammer's like catching in on that. Like the same thing with calling it Psychopath. I mean, they got the word in there, and the same thing, Taste of Fear. It has that kind of feeling of Psycho,
absolutely.
Yeah,
those are the ones I remember too. And outside of those, like I said earlier, Night Creatures, I had a thing for. I'm sorry if I'm putting my hand up over everything.
No, that's fine.
I don't want to say the wrong thing. There was a few more. Plague of the Zombies is another one.
Yeah, I just watched that last week. It was on for Halloween week. And again, it's one of those slow burn kind of movies, it's just slow paced.
Some of the best zombie visuals I've ever seen.
The zombies are really downright scary looking in this. And I noticed some of the now that I've older, when I was younger, seeing Christopher Lee as Dracula made me think, oh, here's just what Dracula looks like. But now when you watch some of his movies, I've noticed that some of Hammer's like stable of actors, their studio actors, were playing in multiple movies. The guy who owns the bar, I think, he actually plays a bar. He plays a bar owner in a couple of these movies, or tavern owner. He plays it in Plague of the Zombies, as he also plays it in a Dracula or a Frankenstein movie or something like that. He's in these roles again. But
are you thinking of, is it Michael Ripper, Montag?
It could be. I don't often know his name.
But playing the bomb, or he was playing the the bartender, or he was and he was in what's that one that I think it was Dracula's Risen from the Grave. And he has that young dude, and he kind of has a bakery. He's a baker and stuff down there too.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. And like you recognize these faces, it's like, oh, okay. And in a way, I kind of love that, like being able to recognize them. But it's a fun kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, okay. It's kind of like, oh, we're family. We're gonna get the family back together. We're gonna do a movie together. We're gonna have fun.
Movie, and you kind of typecast them, and it works, of course.
Yeah.
Another one I was just looking at that I remember too. The Devil Rides Out.
I have my cursor on it right now. That was the one I was going to talk about.
Okay, go ahead. You talk, and I'll jump in with you afterwards.
Well, here we have Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee again playing interesting roles where the story is set it's written by Richard Matheson, so automatically this is going to be amazing. But then we have this whole idea about this witch cult, this satanic group of Satanists who are going to be conjuring the devil, and that's really what this story is about. Christopher Lee is trying to save his friend from this cult. Peter Cushing is not in this, but Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
And so then these people get trapped kind of in the house, where the ritual is going to be performed, and they have to endure the spiritual and physical attacks of this satanic presence, which are really quite effective. I mean, it's a really, really good movie.
It is. Yeah, I'm looking at like it got on this list here. That got number 4 best movie ever on there. Yeah, it's Charles. Yeah, I guess it's Charles Gray plays the cult leader, and you got Christopher Lee, of course. No Peter Cushing, as you said.
Yeah.
But I remember that just being spooky. And I remember the video box as a kid too, and renting that and just loving it. That's what I remember a lot of. And I remember that one was always on too at ABC. They never went down to the Satanic Rites of Dracula or any of those. They never played those on that because I guess at the time it was out. Dracula was out. Wolfman was out. They were bringing in new stuff. You know, they were pushing Trilogy of Terror and all that kind of stuff. But when it got to the Hammer stuff, they pull out these not so much known, a little bit deeper cuts at the time. And I those are the ones I know the most because that was the time when I was very impressionable. And by the time I started collecting everything, I hadn't seen them all. I didn't want to go so far back at the time. I wanted to see current. I wanted to see your Maniacs and shit like that. So looking now, I'm like seeing these pictures. I definitely remember Christopher Lee in this. I mean, he had the crazy beard.
Yes.
And spooky movie.
Yeah.
Definitely spooky, for the time. And what year was that one made?
That's 68.
That's the year I was born.
In the heyday of all the Dracula and Mummy movie or Frankenstein movies, and this one's set in the 1920s, I believe.
It looks like old. Yeah. And I mean that was the same year as Rosemary's Baby, so the Satan angle was coming.
It was big, it was all over the place.
They called it witchcraft then.
Yeah. And so that one that was just on again. I watched it again, and it's just wildly entertaining. It's so well done. And it's another movie. A name that was associated with Hammer is Terrence Fisher. He
what a director.
Exactly. And he did all the movies that we all love. Like you just see his name associated with all of these. I think that's what lends the consistency to their look and to their performance, to the overall
the
production value. Yeah, the flavor of the movie is because Terrence Fisher, and they're borrowing from great writers, and you got these actors who I'm sure I don't think there was a lot of money spent in, but you couldn't tell. I mean, the sets are gorgeous, but they were reused a lot. I don't know, there's a look and there's a feel to these Hammer films, and those main monsters. But then you also add movies like Twins of Evil. And Creatures the World Forgot.
That one I have, but I've never sat down to it. I need to sit down to that one.
I've
never seen any of that one.
Yeah.
And Captain Kronos is great.
Captain Kronos. Yeah.
That on this list here got voted the #1 Hammer movie of all time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Twins of Evil was second on this list, and then third was Let Me In, which later Hammer came back.
Right. And one I think is really fun is The Legend of Seven Golden Vampires.
It is fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah, the Seven Brothers Meet Dracula, because you combines the great elements of horror and martial arts together, which it's just kind of great, two genres, clashing, which I
total drive-in exploitation type of thing.
Yeah,
Go chuckle at this bullshit, and have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch gears.
Kung Fu vampires, you can't go wrong with, right?
Right, you can't.
Right.
You really can't.
It is fun.
So I'm gonna switch gears, since you like Amicus more than Hammer. That's what you've seen a lot more of those, and so let's talk about some of these Amicus films, because I'm on that other end. Like, I've seen them, and I look up my list like, oh, I think I've seen more than I realized was Amicus.
We're gonna flip the fucking table now, because it's like I feel like with Hammer, if people watch this and they're Hammer freaks, you're gonna be like, what is this motherfucker talking about? I don't know all this, because I got friends that are Hammer maniacs. They buy all the posters and the $1,000 Gorgon poster and all that stuff, and they know it. And I wouldn't sit here and bullshit nobody. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen every fucking one. I haven't, but I definitely grew up with it, and I very much know so. And just before you go to Amicus and stuff, I'm glad Hammer's come back, because they put out some pretty good movies of the last ones. I was looking at the newest ones. The Lodge was fucking a weird ass good movie.
Yeah, The Woman in Black, the Resident.
Yeah.
I haven't seen The Lodge.
The Lodge was really weird.
Wakewood.
It was about a man who had I don't want to give it away too much, but it was about this man. He was married to a girl. They got a separation. He ends up with another girl. The kids don't like her. They end up at this house out in a snowbound middle of nowhere. The dad goes for help because they lose electricity, and then they're with the woman, and they slowly become like friendly with each other, and she doesn't know if they're setting them up, getting set up by them, or vice versa with the kids. And it's really got a weird fucking ending. And when the ending came, and I'll just say this and leave it at this: when the ending came, when I watched it, I said, "Oh, they're not going to do this, are they? That's so fucking out of left field," and they do it. So you guys should see it.
Okay.
It's weird.
Check
It's got
it out.
Alicia Silverstone's in it for a bit. She was
nice.
the ex-wife, ex-girl, and it going.
Okay.
He moves forward with another girl. But what I'm getting at is like it still has that. I mean, we're today's world horror is much different, made and everything, but it's still got a deep little eeriness to it that you don't see in every film nowadays. Because we know there's spooky Hollywood movies. Your Conjurings come from Hollywood, or Annabelle, things like that, and they are what they are. They're not awful, but they're very formulated, like the '80s My Bloody Valentine's, Happy Birthday to Me's were. But these ones they've been putting out, like the Woman in Black remake, was okay. It's the original Woman in Black. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's the movie. But I'm happy to see them doing it because they Let Me In and all that. Those are good. So I'm cheering them on, and I do want to work my way back because I've seen more of the current ones than I've seen of the ones that are like, what do you mean you haven't seen fucking whatever?
Well, there's just too many. I mean, there's like 60 of these movies. Unless you're an addict and you got to have every one, you can't have seen them all. I mean, we're talking kind of the memories that we have of these movies, because there's about a dozen or so that come back in rotation quite regularly.
I'm going to sit down to them, though. I am. I'm even going to go to the ones before they were horror, just to see what kind of stuff they were putting out in the older days. I am, and I know I'm looking around my movies on my walls and stuff. I have most of them bought. I buy them all. If I see it, I'll buy it. I'm out buying whatever. I get it. I'm like, one day I'm going to sit down to it. Well, my wife's like, you never get to watch all these movies. There's thousands of movies here, and she's right. But I go on these little kicks. I'm going to see all the fucking Hammer stuff now.
Sure,
and that's where I'm going to go. Over the next month.
Yeah, I love that.
On downtime from the band, I'm going there. And then next time when I talk to you, whatever, I'll be like, I went back, and that mummy is spooky as hell, man.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're gonna like it. You're gonna be impressed. And there are a couple of the Hammer, the Mummy movies that are quite good, and a couple that are not great at all. But there again, it's still, if I had to watch that, or if I watch, given a choice between watching the worst Hammer monster movie or like a fucking drama, Kramer versus Kramer or some shit, I'm gonna take the fucking bad movie, Mummy movie every day. That we like, right. Stay home, Meryl Streep. I don't give a fuck. I'm watching the guy wrapped up in fucking gauze bandage. That's where I'm going.
Right on.
No,
King, you talked about. I'm sorry. I was going to say King talked about they're a lot older Hammer films. Well, the black and whites. I actually have some of those. You get those collection ones. I got 3 or 4 movies and stuff.
Yeah.
I got a couple of those. One of them I thought was really good is The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Okay.
That was really, really good.
I know I have that.
So,
that same DVD you're talking about. I want to watch that one too. It's going to go up to the top with the Mummy, and I will report back because I've never seen it. I know I have never seen it.
I've not seen it either. I want
to see every movie. And as you were saying way earlier in this conversation, these movies are slow for the world today. You can never hold a movie, accountable for the time it came out. It is what it is then. It wasn't made. A lot of stuff we know now we didn't know then, and vice versa. And sometimes the older stuff is better because it's a little bit more organic. Nowadays it's I'm not saying back then because I wasn't alive then to know, but I mean it just seemed like the movies were get in, get out, do what you got to do. Now they seem like more pieced together and not get in, get out. Like so much goes into it. Like let's do graphs, let's do audience response and change the ending. Mm-hmm. Seem like these were more honest, and I'll use the movie Freaks as the example.
Yes, fantastic.
That still seems more honest than stuff you would get now. Nowadays they would go out of their way to make it appalling, to make it as a comfortable way to get it on the internet and stuff. So going back to those movies, like he's saying with Dr. Jekyll, I'll take it for what it is. I'll understand it. When I watch these old silent movies, your Nosferatu or whatever, stuff like that. I'm like, this probably was so fucking creepy at the time. And I'll get lost in that time era, and whatever year it is. For me, most of all my favorite stuff I watch, I've got a thing for the 70s. I guess it's just the look of the time. Maybe it's the look of the cars, the way the world was. Maybe I was impressionable because that was my childhood years. Mm-hmm. But that's always my favorite stuff. So when I see like a Vampire Circus, early 70s, it works, even if it is supposed to be a little bit, earlier than the 70s there. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch all those. So I will go to Dr. Jekyll, and I will visit the Mummy.
Nice. No, it's good. You're gonna be happy with it. I'm sure.
You know what I do appreciate the older horror for as well is as you notice. I mean, there was a time you barely see anything. Everything was edited and cut and everything when it came right to TV, or they really toned down the blood and all that stuff and how much gore. And now, in the last 25 years or so, it's just way over the top. And you look at American Horror Story, some decent seasons, some not. But to me, there's so much focus on a script on sex and gore, then where they should fill the holes with story. And that's where I get kind of lost. It's like, oh, we're shocked. Yeah, we've seen it a million times. Been there, done that. Been there, done that. I'd rather prefer have a great story. You know what I'm saying? Than
oh yeah, that's why the Twilight Zone is one of the greatest shows ever made. Because it always has a story.
Yeah, and the top writers, sci-fi and fantasy writers and horror writers were writing the Twilight Zone. Richard Matheson, all kinds of,
like you said, Robert Bloch, people like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I liked the remake of Let Me In, or Let the Right One In. I thought Chloe Grace Moretz was
well
wonderful. Yeah, we both loved the original version. And I thought I'm not a crazy fan of remakes because they generally fall apart from the original. But Let Me In, I thought was really faithful and done really lovingly and well. So
I've seen both, and yes, I agree. They're both great in their own way.
Yeah, totally. And when I got older, it was nice to see movies like The Vampire Lovers and like, oh, okay, so Hammer actually did nudity. Like, nice, good for you, Hammer. And it came about the right time that I was able to appreciate it.
Thank you, Hammer, for getting me through puberty. Yes,
that's right. Well, let's talk about Amicus. Amicus, I when I was a kid and would see these, or when I started coming across these, I always felt it was kind of like Hammer light. Like it was a cheaper version of Hammer. They didn't have the budget. They didn't pull me in as much. But I've really grown to appreciate them for what they are. It almost they feel a lot like those, like you said, the 70s, like shows like The Night Gallery. They have that kind of feel, because that show scared me as a kid. I mean, I was 5 years old watching The Night Gallery and Kolchak the Night Stalker. Yeah, the intro, this is a sign on for The Night Gallery is enough to give me fucking shits. But when I look at movies like Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, there's an anthology. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee.
There they are making a transformation, coming over from Hammer.
Yeah, and there were quite a few anthologies that came out with them. Them and Torture Garden, The House That Dripped Blood was. I remember that.
Beyond the Grave I bought is a fantastic anthology.
You haven't even named the best three yet.
Tales from the
Crypt, and Asylum, Vault of Horror.
Asylum is the best one. To me, Asylum is great. The best one. Vault of Horror is great. Tales from the Crypt is great. Those are the best ones. The other ones have really good stories in them. From Beyond the Grave has a story here and there, as does House That Dripped Blood and Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Torture Garden is pretty high up too. Burgess Meredith is amazing in that, as his twisted self. But Asylum is the one. Asylum is the one. That's the one. If you're going to go into how you got into Amicus, I'll just take it from here for a minute.
Yeah.
I was a kid. It was 1977. And my stepfather said, you want to go to your aunt's school? They're going to be playing movies this Friday night. I said, yeah, what are they playing? He said, I don't know, but it's a bunch of horror movies. Okay. So we went up to the cafeteria auditorium, whatever it was, and it was a high school, so it probably was its own auditorium. And we sat down, and the projector was running, with the big old sitting there in the middle of the thing. They got the seats separated. You weren't in no auditorium like sitting in velvety seats. You were sitting on a fold-out chair. Anyway, we walk in, I sit down, and the first thing I see is the monkey's paw story from Tales from the Crypt. Okay, I sit down, and the guy's just died, and the wife is like, talking about this statue and rubbing it. Oh, I wish he would come back as he was right before he was dead. And then they come out, and the guy says, I can't believe you wished for this. He was embalmed. He's,
right.
He's alive forever. And you've got one more wish. So she wishes, I wish him before he was dead, and then the limbs. She cuts the limbs. I can't kill him now. He's alive forever. So that was it. Okay, so it was Tales from the Crypt. I'd missed the Joan Collins Santa Claus one, which everybody remembers from that.
Yeah,
I missed a couple episodes, and that's where it started for me, which was Tales from the Crypt. But when that ended, I was like, what am I into? Because I'm a impressionable kid of 9. Like, what the hell is this? This is crazy. It's different stories. I don't think I'd seen any anthologies up to then. I do not think I'd seen anything. And so then this movie came on. It was Asylum. And the very first story came on, which blew me away, which was a story about the man who's cheating on his wife. She's going to a class taking voodoo lessons, as you know, kind of shit. And he doesn't believe her. He's bullshit. And she's like, you still cheating on me, honey? And he's like, no, it's all behind me. I promise you. Buys her a freezer. Oh, that's great. You want another present? And he chops and kills her, puts her body parts in there. And now she's chopped up like meat in a freezer. Okay, so that's the one. The body parts come to life. The voodoo that she was going to the class brings her to life. Blew me the fuck away. And then as the stories unwind, the whole. If you guys haven't seen, I don't know if you have, but the whole premise of this thing is a doctor comes there to find out which one of these patients is really Dr. Starr. Dr. Starr is supposedly playing one of these patients. So they all tell these stories of why they're in the nut house. And that's where you get your stories from, and you have to figure it out. And then the twist ending is phenomenal. Every story's perfect. There's no lulls. There's always one you're like, you can watch a creep show and you'd be like, this story or that. It's always something, but not with Asylum, man. Not with Asylum. And it blew me away. And I went home and I was telling my mom, I'm hyped up now talking about it as I was when I was 9. And the weirdest thing was horror movies took off after your Friday the 13th and your Halloweens came around. And I went one day to the local theater, and there was a movie they were playing called House of Crazies. And I'm like, I want to see this House of Crazies. This looks crazy. So I went in there and sat down, and it started. I'm like, I've seen this before. This is the fucking body parts, because that was the first story. And that's when I realized they take movies and they change the names to fool you to see it again, pay to see it twice, so to speak. And I just fell in love. So when I started going to all these horror conventions and stuff in the 80s, when it was Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, only before their chillers and all that kind of stuff, all I would do was buy Asylum stuff. I'd buy every poster, Japanese one, I just wanted to collect it. I've got it on the wall over here still. I've got tons of that stuff, worth tons of money now, but this was like in the 80s. It was probably expensive then too. But that one has just stayed with me. And I had no idea what studio made it or nothing until years later when I got invested in, reading on all this stuff. And I went to look and I said, oh, wait a minute, there's also that one I saw before. It was Tales from the Crypt, and I didn't see all of it. And there's the Vault of Horror, and there's the Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. There's your Torture Garden and all this stuff. And I just freaked out. And I can't say anything bad. I know Amicus has a lot more movies than just these anthologies I'm talking about right now. But as for that ride there, it's great. I mean, even the worst ones of the stories are still interesting. Like you said, you'd rather watch it than Kramer versus Kramer. I'm the same way with this. But there's nothing that's just like, that was fucking stupid, fast forward it or whatever. No, there's none of that. So if you guys haven't sat down to these anthologies, you must.
Oh yeah.
You must. I mean, they're when you said they were like cheaper than Hammer, yes, they are, but I think they were also darker than Hammer. I think a lot of these stories go more deeper, where you're dealing with the mental illness of the asylum and just the black mean spirit of it all. It wasn't just an entity of a mummy or a Dracula or a Frankenstein. It was just the bad spirit of like bad people. And it just blew me away. It just blew me away.
Sorry, King. Another interesting thing, though, we were talking earlier about how before the 70s, right tail end there, Dracula and the Frankensteins, they were kind of going out of favor, and people were looking for something new. And it's like almost like Amicus picked up that, we'll take this.
Yeah, they gave it a new life before your slashers of Halloween came along, your Black Christmas and stuff. They gave it a new life. It was that little period, like you're saying. I think Torture Garden was the first one. Is that right? Was that like 68, 69?
67, yeah.
67.
Okay.
And then what was the last one? Maybe Tales That Witness Madness, if they count it, or was it From Beyond the Grave, 74?
With Matt, the last anthology.
Yeah, that they did.
Probably
not
From Beyond the Grave.
Stuff.
Probably From Beyond the Grave in 74.
Okay. Yeah. And that started getting like your Twilight Zone, where you had the huge one wheel. I don't know what they call those bicycles. What are those huge ones?
Unicycle?
Oh yeah.
they had, you know, the guy gets on it, it takes them back to a time and stuff. So they were starting to, you know, branch out, and you were like, just get to the, you know, the I don't know, the ghoulish ones. And he stayed there. But I mean, they were all so good. So there's a 7-year ride right there where between your Draculas and your slashers, because I think Black Christmas is 74. So there you go. There's your little period of what's going on in the world. And those anthologies, I recommend them to anybody, because the thing about it is they're not all family. You couldn't have the kids here and watching it so much, but they're not like, oh, I can't turn this off. This is ghoulish. This is awful. This is bloody. If they're actually quite, that was fucking good for, you know, revenge is a big target in a lot of those stories, you know. And
or the twist,
revenge, the one where they go, where all the blind people are, and the good fucking guy running the place leaves, and they get in this militant guy who's like, you know, cutting all their rations and stuff, and they're starting to die because he's turned the heat off, and he's eating steak, and they're eating fucking sewer water for soup, and they just start dying off, and then they, you know, if you haven't seen it, well, their revenge is amazing. What they do in that movie, and you're like, oh man, this is great. If you haven't seen it,
that's a great point, King. Yeah, that is a fantastic tale. And that's another thing, you know, just I'm a huge anthology fan anyways, and I think these are the movies that gave me my love for it. And as I grew older, then anthology film, not all are great, right? We can all test that, but you look at some of the more modern, you know, we can say Trilogy of Terror, one of the old ones is Never Dies. That's just going to be always fantastic, top 10 on my list. And then you also look at Trick or Treat, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. Your creep shows of the 80s. It had a comeback then. It was Creep Show. You had Body Bags, John Carpenter's Body Bags.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Cat's Eye. If you remember those Stephen King's Cat's Eye, there was a few of them because Creep Show did so well. My thing has always been, like, we always talk about, let's make a horror movie. My friends are like, make a horror movie. But I'm always telling them, we don't have any people that can really, truly act and hold a movie for 80, 90, 100 minutes. We should just do shorts. And this is where I get like a thing like VHS, which is popular, you know, they do all these things now. Just these shorts, like these 6-7 minute shorts where you can pull it off. And, you know, that's what these ones were, 20, 22 minutes, but it was long enough. You didn't have to bring these side stories in where, you know, like, for example, that one I was talking about with the body parts that he was cheating on her. We didn't need 15 minutes of him cheating on her and a love making scene. And, you know, and then, oh, when are you going to leave your wife's store? We didn't need that. We got right to the meat and potatoes and we got out. And that's what was so cool about these movies.
Yes, they were the episodes. It was like
they were well acted, and you had your Freddie Francis and stuff directing them. Yeah, they were well acted. They really were.
It was like four episodes of Night Gallery or something. You were watching the, you know, 3 or 4 stories connected. You know, I remember, like, you know, The House That Dripped Blood and you know, the those Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, and, you know, those kinds of movies where you had the interrelated stories. What was the one where they were all, was it The House That Dripped Blood? Talking about the people who all moved in this house. It was just the tale of how everyone who moved into this house all eventually died, or something horrible happened to them.
The one.
Yeah, where you have a writer who's like a murder writer, and then the more he writes, like, he starts seeing the villain, the murderer, like appear, you know. And there's always a twist here, but these stories, like you said, you get in and get out. That's the beauty of a short story versus a novel. And some writers are really great short story writers, like Clive Barker, I think, is a much stronger short story writer than he is a novelist, whereas Stephen King can kind of do both. But short story and these are short stories, so you don't have to worry about all the superfluous stuff and give me 20 minutes of a scene. Like, no, the whole story is 20 fucking minutes. So let's get to it, and just dive right in. And, you know, and so I appreciate that with Amicus.
Me too. And I've said it for years. I keep telling my wife, we're going to have a Halloween get together with our friends, and I'm going to take the best stories from all of them. I'm going to edit them down, and we're going to run like 4 hours where we're sitting there with the sauerkraut and the stogies and nice. Sit there, and I'm like, here's this story from here. Here's an episode of Night Gallery that's going to blow your fucking mind. Here's something with Twilight Zone, and you're in, you're out. You know, and that's just, to me, the best. It's the best, because, but don't get me wrong, when you have a movie, your Exorcist or your Burnt Offerings, where you can tell this 2-hour tale and you're like, wow, and it's just special. It's special. But we all know, even movies we love, horror movies, some of them, there's parts you're just like, I still say the third act of Halloween drags, or it's the second act in Halloween that drags. I say the third act of Friday the 13th it don't need to be there. It's too long. I love Scarface, but I wouldn't be fucking offended if it was 40 minutes shorter. There's a lot of stuff you're just like, it doesn't need to be here. And that's when you get it perfect, it's great. Your Exorcist is a perfect film. But if you get these short films, there's really no time to like not like it. Either the story's stupid or it's great. And if it's great, you're locked in for 22 minutes and you're out. It's like a TV show. And that's great. To me, that's great. And that's one of the reasons I love TV movies too. It's like Trilogy of Terror was the anthology trilogy. He did a bunch too. We can't go without talking about Dan Curtis, because Mr. Burn Offerings did Trilogy of Terror. He did Dead of Night. You know, he did those, and those were spooky fucking tales. And Night Stalker too. So
Night Stalker, and I grew up with watching Dark Shadows, you know, because my mom would watch that, and for me, I kind of got the concept of a soap opera when she used to watch soap operas when I was younger, and I didn't care about those, but I loved watching Dark Shadows because here's a soap opera with a vampire, like, and a werewolf, like, and a witch, like, oh my God, you know. So I watched it religiously because I'm like, yeah, there's a vampire, and it wasn't like scary. It had that gothic spookiness. The
intro was cool,
but the intro was awesome. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I would watch. And like, you know, I have the series now on DVD. It's like, yeah, I will still watch it because it's still entertaining to that 4-year-old sensibilities. Like, yeah, I'm okay with it being silly. And now as an adult, I see all the guffaws and like the obvious mistakes, but it's like, I don't care. I'm watching an entertaining story, and I'm cool with that. And that's kind of how I feel about these movies. There are some that are, it's okay, but it's you're in and you're out. You're not going to be worried about wasting an hour and a half of your time with one story that's you're going to be like regretting that you watched. You're going to get 4 stories. Like, hey, you might like 3 of the 4. That's not bad. You know, I'll take it.
Absolutely. And then you get Asylum, and you'll get them all. It'll be the perfect anthology horror to me.
You know, kind of diverting a little bit when we talked about, you know, TV horror films and stuff. And I'll tell you, we should do a show separate on that. But man, I just watched last night Gargoyles.
Love it. That was another one of the 70s ABC 4 o'clock.
Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Oh my God.
Dark Knight of the Scarecrow I watched with my mom on Sunday night when it premiered. I think it was 79. My mom's like, you want to watch this? It's about some crazy scarecrow. And we sat down. It was more to it, obviously, than a crazy scarecrow. And we loved it. Oh, yeah. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. That's an amazing story. You know, that's classic. Or a little bit later on, Don't Go to Sleep from the early 80s with Valerie Harper and Dennis Weaver and Ruth Gordon. I mean, that we could do a show on that. I can tell you one thing. I've got one of the biggest TV movies list there is. Like when I was doing trading back in I have at least 4,000 TV movies. A lot of them that nobody else had. Not all horror or nothing. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Because that, like you were saying with your Dark Shadows, leaves an impression on me. Because as a kid, it would be like ABC, Friday night at the movies. Tonight, it would be like Duel. You know, those were made for TV.
Duel is amazing.
That's where it started. Or Cold Night's Death. Have you guys ever seen that? That's basically, a lot of people think that John Carpenter stole his version of The Thing from it. That's a cool one. That's Robert Culp. It's really fucking good. And then one of my all-time favorites is Satan's Triangle from 1975.
Wow.
You gotta watch. That's one of the spookiest TV movies ever made, and it's always under the fucking radar.
We gotta talk. I gotta send you a hard drive for you to put some things on for me, there, King. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get diverted on that, but we
no, absolutely, because it all comes together with the anthology because it's the same formula. I mean, even those movies then, we know back then those movies didn't run 90 minutes. They weren't 90-minute movies. They were like 72 fucking minutes. You know.
Right.
Back then that's all it took. You were on and off at 90. They didn't run 2-hour slots. You know, now you get a 3-hour slot for an 80-minute movie, and you watch. Right. If you go to AMC, for example, as your cable, we were watching yesterday. And, I was watching Coma or something was on. I was like, God damn! Every 8 seconds, there's a goddamn friggin'.
Yeah, that's why I stopped watching AMC. It's like, no, I will watch IFC, which is much better. At the front end, that's a bad.
I don't know what it was. It wasn't. I was watching
Turner Classic. Has no.
But it literally went like the movie moved about 4 minutes, and it was into a commercial reel again.
Yeah, like, that pisses me off. I DVR everything and watch it, but. Those movies like you had mentioned there, Chop, Gargoyles, I have it on my DVR right now because it was on again during Halloween week. That is such a good movie. I remember seeing probably on the Ghoul or one of those, growing up, one of those, it was on a Saturday Saturday afternoon. And
I think I saw Superhost at first. And I'll tell you, Bernie Casey as the head gargoyle. Those effects, the practical, the makeup.
Yeah. Oh my God, the suits. Yeah,
it's great.
It's gorgeous. And
fantastic role performance.
It's a great story. Well acted, good special effects.
All these ones you're naming mean a lot to me. Again, you're talking about that getting out of school, coming home. It's like before they ever had Oprah Winfrey take over the ABC channel where I lived. It was always General Hospital 3 to 4. Then it was 4 to 5:30 was the afternoon movie, and they always had like Horror Week was almost every other. It seemed like it was twice a week, 2 weeks out of the 4 of the month, and they always would play. Gargoyles would come on, and do you remember the movie? Call it where the guy turns.
Oh yeah, turned into a snake.
Benedict, Strother Martin. It was always on. Let's Scare Jessica to Death was right. Repeated all the time, and then of course Trilogy of Terror was the one that set me off as a kid.
Oh man,
so that's what I've seen those so many times because they probably had 20. Another anthology that I don't want to forget. God damn it! It was with Ed Beagley Jr. Was it when he took the old car back into time? Oh, I forgot what the hell that was. That was Dead of Night. The Dead of Night was always on there too. That was the first story on there. Mm-hmm. That, and there was another one that this is weird. This one sits on its own. It's called Encounters with the Unknown. Rod Serling hosted it. Different stories. Very cheap. Not any production value to it. But that was always on too. Neat. Wow. I remember the one where they had the seventh son of the seventh son. Story where they were all up in this airplane and she wished them to die because her son had died from them, some kind of shit. It was stupid, but it was so freaky. And like you're saying, I think, and I do this with music too, and I think a lot of people do this with music too. You love the time more than anything. Maybe some of the music or the movies not as great as you remembered it, but you're always going to cherish that time of your life, your dark shadow. You go back and say, it ain't perfect, but as a kid, the memory's perfect.
Exactly. It's like why I still watch like Godzilla and Gamera movies. It's when I watch Speed Racer, Star Blazers, all the things. Marine Boy, Ultraman, Astro Boy,
Johnny Sacco.
Johnny Sacco, love Giant Robot. I don't know if you could tell back here. I've got a Johnny Sacco.
I do see Johnny Sacco.
Yeah, and as well as the Christopher Lee Mummy. Right here.
I do see the Christopher Lee.
Yes,
I think they should have remade Johnny Sacco in the late 70s, early 80s with Gary Coleman.
Well, there's the anime, but yeah, I'd love, and I actually talked to, I'm Facebook friends with the woman who was in Johnny Sacco, who played, she was the, I forget her name, the agent. We're Facebook friends, and she does Johnny Sacco stuff all the time. So it's really kind of nice.
I met the guy years ago that did the American voice for Speed Racer, and it was so weird because he was talking to me and he had that voice coming out. Because the thing about Speed Racer I always loved, not to get way off this fucking subject.
That's fine. I don't care. We're off the rails. It's fine.
We're Lulu. But the weirdest thing for me was the Speed Racer. They could take one sentence, you'd know the whole episode. Be like, I can't believe it's, I can't believe it's Speed. You've ridden in the world's fastest car, and now you're sick and you can't drive, and now we have to get Chim Chim and Spritle and Chim Chim to do it. And they'll tell you the one run-on sentence. Every line they did in the thing was so long. If you go back and watch it,
Speed, you're driving too fast. We must go. Pops would join in there.
We're going to beat the world's fastest race team. We've got to go through the cave, and you don't have time to do this. It's got to happen for this. And Pops is in the hospital. And then period.
Right.
But I'm exactly the same thing for me, man.
Right.
We're naming it back and forth, man.
Yeah, I bought an Ultraman, and it's like I have them all in Japanese, all the Ultraman series, and I love them all. And the same, I still put on the Ultraman series in English because that's the way I remember it. And the same thing with
the intros different. Speed Racer was called Maka Go.
Mako Go Go.
And I bought that at a chiller one time. They're like, oh, it's longer, has a different theme. And I watched. I'm like, it's cool, but I don't know how to speak Japanese. I got no idea what they're saying.
Oh, okay. So, I've got a subtitled version if you're interested. I'll be happy
cool.
I'll be happy to send it your way, man.
That's awesome. And just as a little plug, Voivod just put out the Discovery.
Yes. And Voivod's coming on Heavy Metal Horror.
Cool. Yeah. Japanese version, all kinds of stuff on there.
Yeah, that's the new album. It's an Ultraman album. Voivod actually coming on our show in January.
Awesome.
Yes.
Make sure you mention me, and they'll be like, "Oh, goddamn, he's crazy." I'm the world's biggest Voivod fan.
Oh, nice. So that's good.
I've seen him 53 times. Nobody's seen him more than me.
Oh, fuck, that's awesome.
I saw their very first show in America. I've been best friends with them since about 84.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And the release before this Ultraman EP because I bought it, and the one before that are fantastic.
That's I'm excited, man. I'm excited to talk with these guys.
That's great. That's great stuff.
Yeah. So, but like with watching these shows, it doesn't matter how old I am. I'm transported to the same feelings. When I see the mammoth car, I still am afraid because it was so big. And then I remember it melting down, those scenes where it's melting. I still remember it, and then the sounds, the cars, the music is it's just indelible. It's printed in me. It's never gonna leave, and that's great.
About that show that was very weird, and I still think it might. I have no idea cartoons that I couldn't tell you, but as a kid, that might be the only show where they actually killed people on it. Because if you remember, they blow up. Oh, yeah. Right. Cars would blow up and they burn. They'd be dead. You see people hunched over the side of their cars, and this is from the 60s.
Yeah.
The ultimate. What was the guy's name? Snake Oiler.
Oh, right. Yeah. And they have the whole
guy and like the leader of the
acrobatics.
Yeah. That guy. Yeah. They were creepy as hell. And it was the one where he had to take the speed car, the world's fastest.
Oh, the world's fastest car. Yeah, the GRX.
It's GRX. That's it. And
I'm so thirsty. No, don't drink anymore. I'm so thirsty. And he's like,
you got it.
Gotta have water. And like they would show all the film getting faster and faster. He's like, no, I can't handle it. Yeah. As a kid, I like totally sucked into this, and I believed it was real. And it didn't take much for me.
Me either. I was in love with Trixie. I was hoping she'd give me ink poisoning. I love Trixie.
We
were talking about this on Facebook. Maybe you saw this. I put a goofy thing up 2 or 3 weeks ago. Dick Butkus should have played Pops in the movie.
Oh, that would have been funny. Yeah, I can.
It looks just like him.
He does. If he could learn how to talk like him. Speed. We're going to. You're driving too fast.
On that windshield, and the windshield's broken. Those plans were, they were great.
Exactly right. Yeah, I remember one of my favorite ones was the 2-part episode where where Spritle was replacing the prince. They switched places, and so because he wanted to race.
I remember it.
Anyway, yeah, and yeah. Oh, now I want to watch those. Now one
of my favorite ones is the one where the man didn't want him to ride his daughter in the car because she was hit by the car. He rode the horse.
Yes, yeah.
Remember that one? And at the end, Speed had to get the car to get her to the hospital, or she was going to die. And he understood that cars could be used for good too.
Cars are okay. Yeah.
All right. That's our Super Speed Racer special. Right. Sorry about that. Sorry,
no, man. It's
this is about nostalgia too. Here it is, and when it comes to like we could talk about the Hammer and Amicus, we could go on and on about those, but there's so many other things that takes us back those moments. I mean, at heart, it just makes you feel comfortable. It's like being covered on a freezing day with a nice blanket, your favorite blanket. It just brings you back to that warm, special feeling place that unfortunately nowadays we need more experiences like that because we don't have a lot of warm, special things out there anymore.
I know. What a world. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't mind this conversation it's fine. I mean, it's not scripted. I'm happy to go where it goes. I mean,
no man has gone before.
Yeah, and we all have these shared experiences. That's the thing. I mean, we only met you a few months ago, but we have such similar backgrounds and what we like. It's like we understand one another. We've had similar upbringings as far as what we've seen, what we like, whether it's Ultraman, Johnny Sacco. Because I remember crying the last episode of Johnny Sacco. I bawled my eyes out. I was like 5 or 6 because I was fully invested. Johnny Sacco, Giant Robot was my friend. I wanted to be in his hand flying around. And when he was like flying out to blow up Emperor Guillotine, I'm like, oh my, I just was like, no, come back, Giant Robot. You can't be dead, and sacrificing himself. And I watched it again not too long ago. And like, I remembered feeling very like, okay, yeah, I get it why I was sad. I didn't cry. But it was still for a 6-year-old, my heart was broken. And
we're definitely nostalgic. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you guys in a Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Yeah, I know. Nice.
That's true.
Yeah,
so that's where I live in the past too, and I love it.
Yeah, there's no reason to not enjoy it. It's those things like, and the kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s, their nostalgia is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or it's going to be He-Man, and things that, or G.I. Joe. It was like, I was a little too old to really like those. I mean, I can watch He-Man, it's fine, or Thundercats, and I just don't have the same feelings about it.
Yeah, I'm a Flintstone guy.
Although Chitara is kind of hot. Let me just say that. Yeah, Chitara.
Like the Super Friends, Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom,
Wonder when powers activate.
Yeah, Super Friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Of Dana's tampon. Now they wait.
Yeah. All those shows. I mean, Scooby Doo. I will still watch the original Scooby Doo.
The early ones are spooky. They're actually kind of spooky.
There are some great ones there, and I
had the Sportsman one with Scooby Dum.
Yeah, I like the one where he's
coin.
Yeah. I like the werewolf one, and I like the one where there's at the old airport. It's the kooky space ghost that's kind of glowing, and he makes that kind of laugh.
What about when they met people? They met Jerry Reed, and it was the Phantom of the Opera, whatever the hell it was supposed to be, and then the guy looked just like Gene Simmons in the makeup. It was Kiss makeup.
Yeah, that's when they started doing the longer ones.
For that one, it was like today's Scooby Gang, Jerry Reed,
right? Or the Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah, it was an hour-long episode.
Mama Cass. They met Mama Cass.
Mama Cass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are those kinds of things that.
Although when they got Scrappy Doo, that can go to hell.
Yeah, I hate that little fucker.
Uncle Scrappy, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, fuck you, Scrappy.
Happy power.
Yeah.
He was terrible.
I think that's the unifying thing is like all of these movies with Hammer, Amicus, all these cartoons and TV shows. Remember growing up, the nostalgia is there and it doesn't go away. It reminds us of a simpler time, and it's just pure enjoyment, And even though we've seen it 1,000 times, you could just it's still enjoyable. There is something to these movies that appeals to these TV shows that is appealing to us. It's always going to appeal to us. And, if it makes us feel like kids again, I'm all for it. I mean, the older we get, the more I want to remember what it was like to be a kid,
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And going back to Amicus, that's a memory, that night at that school when I was 9, and I just went down that road with all of them, and I fell in love with all of them. When VHS actually came out and you could rent them, the first 3 movies I ever rented was the farewell concert of Cream, the band Cream, Flash Gordon, and Volta Horror. That's what this local little Spanish store had, about 40 movies, and those were 3 of them. And I'm like, Volta Horror, there it is. Look, on VHS, I can take it over and watch it again and watch it again. So what I used to do was I was dating this girl. We would get her my VCR, and we'd get her mother's VCR, and we'd put them together, and we'd just keep taping those movies.
Yes.
Long before they put those guards on them.
Right. And
I didn't realize that 6-hour speed would look like shit, because I was like, well, why wouldn't you put 4 movies on this tape?
Exactly. Right. And you're watching again, it doesn't quite look as good. Looks like it came in like snowy reception when,
Exactly. That's what I did for many years, man, was that.
Yeah.
All those movies. And that's how I got a couple of those, because, as a kid, you can't, it isn't like now where you could just go on the YouTube and find these movies. Back then, you got to hope they came in the theater or what, before all that stuff. So a lot of this stuff you didn't get to see, like he was saying, like Gargoyles on TV and all that. If you didn't get that, that's why those memories are so cherished, because that's all you had. That's why I tell my wife, when I'm singing these songs, like the first song I ever sang on stage was Billy Joel, You May Be Right, 1980. I was 12. So I was so nervous to go out and play as a 12-year-old that I went over those lyrics 8,000 times. So when it's on the fucking radio and I'm Friday night, I crashed your party, and every line comes to me instead of stuff that came later, it's because later you had 18,000 records. You had 10,000 movies. When you were a kid, you had 3. You were holding on to those things with dear life. And that's why they stay with us so much, I think. The memory is just so, it's your first. It's like your virgin fucking horror fucking run. I know that for me with the burn offerings in the theater, or especially that ABC thing I keep throwing back at you guys. I love it so much. I still would love to go back. I would love somebody to say I have them recorded and see the commercials of the times, whether it be fucking 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, sesame seed,
on a sesame seed drum.
Here's gargoyles at 4:00 again. That kind of shit. It's so cool.
Right. Yeah. You go. It's a time machine. A few of the Amicus films that we haven't mentioned that I really like, Madhouse, 1974, with Vincent Price. He plays the actor, involved in a series of murders. People are dying like we're, in his movies. That Vincent Price, I can watch in anything. And there's like almost like this kind of like a knowing wink to the audience, no matter where it's at. And like how delicious of the career that he had, that he could just kind of play these roles. And how could you not have fun, you know? And that's the thing that all of his movies, you know,
I think
Madhouse.
it had Robert Quarry in it too. Robert Quarry was like the antagonist.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
great
just so much fun. And then also the same year, The Beast Must Die, which is a werewolf story.
Oh yeah, the werewolf break.
Yeah, where you know the millionaire invites these people to his house, and there's a mystery. And what I liked about this, there's I don't know if it's a Hammer or someone, maybe it's another Amicus one, where it tells the audience like, okay, 3 times in the movie there'll be a scene of unbelievable horror, and we're gonna like we're gonna flash red at the screen, and if you don't want to look at, here's your warning to look away. It's so tame, it's not even funny. But this one also has that mystery element, and it dares the audience to try to figure out who the werewolf is, and I love that concept. I mean, it's not a great movie.
The William Castle School of Schlock.
Yes, and it's not a great movie. It's not, but it's still it's fun. There's a pacing to it, and there's an engagement to it. And then the last 3 they made, I remember seeing these in the theater, our local theater, when I was a kid in the summertime. They had movies that were, and I think it was, I mean, it might have been something like, I don't know, they might have been like $1 or something for a movie. And it was like summer movies. You get 10 movies for $10 for the summer. And they would show like Disney movies, but they showed like the last 3 here. The Land That Time Forgot was one of the movies that they showed here. At the Earth's Core, which also has Peter Cushing. I mean, they had a big drill and they're drilling down into the earth. Yeah. And then The People That Time Forgot. I mean, like these 3 movies, along with like Disney movies, like
like the ugly Dachshund, or
Nutty Professor, Cat from Outer Space. These are the kind of movies they would show. And for $1, I mean, I could walk to the theater. It's only a 10-minute walk. I'm like, I'm happy I was so fucking happy as a kid to go see a movie. They always showed cartoons ahead of time, and then they would always show the movie like a second time. Like they would have 2 showings, and I would always stay for the second showing. They didn't care. They didn't charge me. I just sat there, and I'm like, I could just watch movies all day. So I totally love these last movies that Amicus did with these dinosaur heavy movies. Land That Time Forgot, People That Time Forgot, At the Earth's Core.
I think those were like influenced by like Sinbad and all that at the time. Your Ray Harryhausen stuff.
Yeah, because they're they're borrowing from Edgar Rice Burroughs. But yes, totally that Sinbad era. Because I think that was one I remember seeing. Sinbad, the Golden Voyage of Sinbad. I remember seeing in the theater, and the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad seeing on TV. Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I hear she's every bit as nice as you'd like her to be. For my friends who've met her, a couple
times, very nice.
Yeah.
My Sinbad story goes like this. My mom went to the drive one night. She said, "Sinbad, what is this?" I said, "Kind of a fantasy, it's a little sci-fi." She said, "Well, I like it." I said, "I don't know." We went in there. We were about 25 minutes into it. My mom said, "This sucks," and we left. It wasn't my mom's kind of movie. My mom would sit through Maniac. She would sit through all these crazy, don't answer the phone, suck, great, terrible, whatever you want to call them, movies, but that was just not her thing. She's like, "This sucks, let's go." I can remember plain as day. I guess it was late 70s, big ass sign. It was Sunday night, and she was like, "You want to go to the drive-in before we go home?" I was like, "Yeah." "What's playing?" "Sinbad." I think it was the Golden Voyage, whatever you said. I don't remember which one it was. We sat through it. She didn't like it, and then a couple years later, Clash of the Titans came out. My mom was like, "This looks like that fucking Sinbad. I don't want to see this either." Wasn't mama's thing. She'd sit through Urban Cowboy 67 times though. She'd be like, "John Travolta can put his boots on her back at any time."
That's great. That's great. No Jason and the Argonauts. If it was John Travolta and the Argonauts, we'd be there, right?
That's hilarious. But as you're saying these later movies too, I just was actually watching a couple weeks ago, right before Halloween kicked in, The Creeping Flesh was on.
Oh, nice.
You know that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's where the big, they're like kind of rolling around on the countryside, right? These like blobby things.
Well, no, he gets water spilled accidentally on this and finds out that's what.
Yeah.
Remember, the flesh comes back.
Right. What's the ones with like they look like the big egg foo youngs, like the Hordas? They're all like blobby looking creatures that are roaming around on the fields. That's a sci-fi. Is that Hammer Amicus? Maybe not. It's a British film. It's like a sci-fi film, you know, where they have these creatures that are kind of roaming around.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not coming to me.
It could be one of those ones that the same company that did that horrible one. Yeah, was it Triton or something that with Peter Cushing, The Night of the Blood Beast? You know, something like that. It might have been something along that.
Yeah, that wasn't a good one.
That's not good. But
here's one I forgot about. I'm looking at here, just seeing some of these ones. Here's another anthology I forgot came later. The Uncanny. They did with the 3 stories about the cats before Cat's Eye. It was the Uncanny.
Oh, I've never seen that.
That's a good one. That's a real good one. I remember the very first story. He's really freaky. I don't want to give it away.
When I'm thinking the Uncanny, I was thinking the Lon Chaney movie, which I liked. Yeah.
And then there's also the Skull, Peter Cushing, the Skull.
Yep.
That was a pretty intense movie. I remember my stepdad liked that one a lot. And I'm just
not the Screaming Skull.
No, not the Screaming Skull. No.
Scream and Scream Again is in here. See, it's weird because it says it's Amicus, and I guess it is, but it's so light, not Amicus. Like they must have just attached their name to it, but it's not their usual rundown. You know, that one, I mean, Scream and Scream Again's got Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, and Peter Cushing in it.
Oh, nice.
I got a double feature when I had Scream and Scream Again and the Oblong box in it.
That's the MGM doubles, right?
Right.
Yeah. Was it the Roger Corman ones get released quite a lot, you know, which I think are fun.
Those are really good.
Those are really good.
Now I'm seeing the Psychopath I was talking about earlier is actually Amicus, so there you go on that.
Okay.
It's easy to, I mean, when we're getting into these fucking people like Peter, I'm like, okay, I'm lost. To the Devil a Daughter was one we forgot for Hammer. I liked. I remember buying that.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
There's just dozens and dozens of movies, but now I want to go back and go through the list like you. I'm like, okay, I got to start watching these again and reacquainting myself with some of the ones I had not seen. You know,
have you seen What Became of Jack and Jill?
No, I see it on the list here.
Mind of Mr. Soami.
I've seen the Terranauts. We did a thing for Unsane Radio. We watched the Terranauts. Terranauts is not great, but it's you know, it's enjoyable.
I'll watch them all. I'm gonna go through them all. I mean, Amicus only they don't have that many.
Right. No, they don't.
Maybe 30, maybe 30.
Yeah, and there's like I Monster.
Most of them, but I'm gonna watch all those. Terranauts I've never seen. I've watched the trailer. I'm a big trailer guy too. I love 6-hour trailer reels, but not when it repeats the shit I've seen. I don't need to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre over and over. Trailer or Halloween. I want to see these weird movies that came and went real quick. And
something weird.
The lowest under the radar shit. I don't even mean like Boogeyman or Zombie.
Grindhouse shit.
You know, like the what was the one I was just watching? One had all these old sci-fi. There was some weird fucking movies come out, man. Some weird shit. But those were good. I mean, what about what was the other series? There was another series too. Was it Tygon that was British?
That's the one. Yeah. That's the company that did the Night of the Blood Beast. I think.
Tygon. I'm trying to remember that one too.
Yeah,
Talk about series. Hammer did Hammer's House of Horrors.
Oh, right.
Stories in that too.
Yeah. You just hit a home run, my friend. That is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Because as a kid, I'd get them in the box. Elvira would be on the big box.
Which is all you. That's why
House that Bled to Death.
Good reason.
Be, I'm trying to remember what all of them were. Growing Pains. Some of the titles on there, and I didn't know it was a TV show.
That werewolf when all the kids are werewolves.
Oh, you're talking about. You're talking about the full moon. Beware the what's it called? Oh my God! Children of the Full Moon.
Children of Full Moon. Oh man, classic.
Yeah, I didn't come across those until I was in probably my 30s. I would say late 20s, early 30s, and I thought, oh, this is awesome. And there was a roommate I had who was huge movie buff, and he was the one who found them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I gotta watch all these, you know.
I've watched every episode of that. I've got the box set. When Borders Books had a blowout years ago, they were selling the box set. Because originally the box set was like $90 on DVD back then. $5. I bought them. I bought every one of them in the store. Christmas. You got to see this. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I do because I have this too. It's only on PAL. But they also did Hammer House of Mystery too.
Yes, I just acquired that from a place. Just say not a physical media. Let's just say that.
There's an episode that I love dearly. It's called Child's Play. It's obviously not Chucky. It's story about these people who are inside this house and they can't get out, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of this house. It's got Crosby, the Who Shot Jr. Mary Crosby, Bing Crosby something. Yeah. She's the main actress in it. It's amazing twist ending, Twilight Zone. You know, a lot of those Hammer horrors and that mysteries. Donna Mills did a lot of those. You know, One Deadly Owner, where she had the haunted car, and there was more. They're not coming to me, but the House of Horrors, Hammer horrors, I love that. Love that theme. They still play that up here on Comet sometimes. I don't know if they play it where you guys are, but
you get it on
Comet,
TV. You can
that
get
Comet
it on
channel,
TV.
they smush all the films. Like, it looks like shit.
Yeah.
There's nothing widescreen. If you got a widescreen TV, it's all mushed.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think we kind of grew up in a golden era of horror, movies and TV that there's a resurgence. I mean, we're living in a golden era now of just entertainment on television. I mean, with all the streaming channels, I mean, you can find wonderful entertainment. Any streaming channel is going to find, great stuff, but this has been such a great conversation because it brought me back to a lot of movies like, yeah, this is just awesome. It's like you want to take the day off and you just want to sit and just kind of curl up and just like eat snacks and watch movies all day. I want a bowl of pizza rolls, and I want to sit there with some Cheetos and and just have a good time. Now I'd probably want to get high and watch a lot of these now, but it's just the nostalgia is just so wonderful,
Great.
But King, I think we could talk about this this subject since we all love it so dearly, and you, my God, I cannot wait. If you have a master list of like your TV movies,
I have to go. You know what? I was just telling my wife, because what you were talking about, I do the thumb drives now. I used to do DVD-Rs when I used to trade people, and it was great. I burned my PC out so bad I can't even. I sold some CDs, and I was telling my buddy Jim, I was like, dude, I can't even burn a CD anymore. My CD DVD player is so fucked up. So I went to going to the thumb drive and doing some stuff like that, but most of my movies are still on DVD-R, so I have to get them and put them in there and try to burn them to thumb drive. So I have to go looking for these, these online. Like anybody can grab from YouTube now.
Right, that's a YouTube archive.org.
For example, this movie Satan's Triangle. If you go to YouTube, we get off this thing, and you go to YouTube, type in Satan's Triangle TV movie, you're going to get a perfect copy right there for you to see. I can point you in the right directions. Like when I was doing the TV stuff, I was finding some crazy shit. Like I was heavy on this stuff. We're talking about 90, 95, 96, 97. I was finding all these people around the world. This is how it worked around the world, that you'd literally be like, excuse me, I heard, you were on eBay and you were selling this Elizabeth Montgomery movie, that was Howling in the Woods. And I was like, do you have anything else? And it would literally come back. It was this lady. I remember she was an older lady. She's like, I used to tape them all on my beta. I got them all on my beta. And she'd have movies that nobody had. And then I found a guy that was a movie. Everybody was looking for this movie. It was called The Night Caller. And it was Robert Reed calling up girls and talking dirty to them on the phone. Everybody was looking for this fucking movie. And I just happened to talk to this lady who knew a guy in Canada, and this guy was an older guy like her, and he was just like, yeah, just tape them off TV. I do have it. I got that thing. I must have got. I mean, I didn't want to give it out to nobody at first because the way it worked, you give it to one person, they're going to take all your fucking sales. Sure. So what I did is I made sure I did all my trades first. Nobody could bring it out, and then got this stuff. So I have all this stuff, and tons of these never came out on any format, and tons did. I also used to have, I sold them all actually, but I used to have one of the biggest VHS collection of TV movies. I have a friend Giles online. I don't know if you guys know a guy named Giles Lavery. He sang for Warlord for a little while, but he was like coming to me like, my God, I can't believe you have these. I mean, just really, really super rare stuff. Death Be Not Proud. It's a Robbie Benson movie where he got a brain tumor and died. He was playing a guy.
Yes, I remember that. Yes. Holy fuck.
Not super rare to find a movie, but super rare to find it on VHS. And I went to this place called Big Bad Wolf Video one time. It was a porno store. And I went in there, and the thing I realized, a lot of porno stores in a lot of states is you go in there, they have to, by law, have at least half their movies have to be non-rated X movies. So they'd have this section that nobody wanted to buy, but it just kept the FBI out of their fucking store. And I'd go in there and they'd have these ridiculous prices, but by ridiculous, it was $18. Okay, yeah, that's high for a VHS, but not Death Be Not Proud, which is on Amazon for $799.
Jeez.
It's $18. So I buy all these friggin' movies. And then when I moved up here from Virginia, I sold like I had at least between those and all my other ones, I sold like 12,000 VHS.
Jeez.
It was insane. I mean, when I lived, no shit. I'll send you pictures. I have it all in my storage because when I first came up here, I had to put them in storage. It cost me like $13,000 for 2 years in there. And it was insane how much shit I had. But I burned them all over to DVD-R when I sold them.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of those sit. Or I have the dubs of people as they get better. There's another movie called Fighting Back. It's the Rocky Blyer story. He was a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody's looking for this movie. The only version that exists besides the original broadcast, because what's his name played him? Robert Urich played him. Is besides the original broadcast that nobody seemed to have taped it in 1977 whenever it came on. One time they played it on ESPN. Of all things, because it was about the Steelers, and it's got the fucking scores running at the bottom, and people are like, "What the hell? Can you take that out?" I'm like, "Look, this is the only fucking known version that exists of this fucking movie." Yeah. And so all this stuff, I have like these copies, and people still come asking. I just tell them, I'm like, "Look, dude, I can't do it. It's a pain in the ass now because I can't get my DVDs over." And I was just telling my wife the other day, we got to figure something out. So I bought the DVD-R, to insert it to the USB port kind of thing. But all the DVDs are so fucking old now. The DVD,
right? They're degrading. Yeah,
they're fucking up bad. They won't even read. I got to sit there for 15 minutes with my shirt and rub it and spin a little bit and try to get everything because every little thing on it stops in my computer. Still, I'm like, oh my god, this is fucked up. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. But I can point you in the direction of so many cool movies that
There's a lot of ways to get stuff out there. I was like you with my video collection, and I actually worked at one time. I was teaching, but I also worked 3 part-time jobs at 3 different video stores. And that was the big part of it was because I could get access to movies for free, and I had the setup where I had the VCRs hooked up together and I was making copies,
rolling every day.
And there was the one place they had a VCR, they had VCRs in there, to play trailers. I always played movies, but I would just bring my VCR in and hook it up and just make copies while I'm there. I'm like, why not? And so that gave, I had over probably, I don't know, Chop knows, I had over like 1,200 VHS tapes, each of them, most of them had multiple movies on it, because that's how we used to watch all the horror stuff that we had, because I would work at the video stores like, oh, I've never seen this horror movie. I'm gonna take it home. And then that went to like burning it on the DVD when that technology came out. And now I just find it so much easier to get the digital copy and then put it onto a hard drive. I've got like 8 external drives, 12 terabytes here, 10 terabytes there. It's just so much more convenient now to have 5,000 movies on a drive rather than have
one thing this big. Oh, you're talking about
just on my computer.
Even the little thumb drives you can get. I've gotten like 200 movies on some of those.
Oh yeah, of course. And now now I don't have to move all the.
And I go look at my DVD-Rs that are in these fucking like FBI fucking file looking things. I'm like, fuck these.
Yeah, exactly.
All this room.
I'm like, no, I'm going to digital, like same thing with my comic books. It's like, no, I donated my comic books. I sold my comic books. I got rid of most of my VHS tapes. I gave away my VHS tapes. And it's like, it's just so much easier now. I mean, I have a lot of DVDs that are probably 10 years old now that I burned, and they're probably all degrading. It's like, you know what? I'm just going all digital as much as I can.
I'm just truthfully, I don't want to say the word ignorant. I'm just insane with movies and getting them. I'm like into this abundance of them. I mean, it's not quality, it's not quantity over quality. I just want to see them all. So when I see something I don't have, and my mom used to always go places. My mom was a talker like me. She was like, had the gift of gab, we call it. And we go into these going out of business places of these video stores, even as late as Hollywood and Blockbuster. And my mom would go in there and she's like, oh, my son's really interested in these movies. And they'd have something rare, like what was the one we were doing one day? It was Forced Entry, which was a 70s kind of a rape revenge movie with Tanya Roberts and Nancy Allen were in it. Very rare movie. And they wanted like a bunch of money, but then when they were selling everything, my mom's like went in there and started talking for me, like, well, if he buys this and this and this and that, you want to just throw this in? And then she talked these people into it. The next thing I know is at this place called Power Video, every movie I brought up there was a quarter. So they're like, just give me a quarter. They're like, you're buying almost the whole store, but at least we could do is give you a deal. Then when I remember we were on tour, we were in Alston, Massachusetts, and I went into this Blockbuster, and I'm like, yeah, this is their last day. And the guy's like, what are you doing? Buying a bunch? I had a stack like this. And they were like $3 each. And that's cheap too. But the guy's like, you know what? Whatever you want, a penny a piece. Just give me a fucking penny. A penny a piece. So then I asked our guitar player for the fucking key to the van. He came out. He's like, what in the fuck? And he was like, dude, there's like 500 movies here. I'm like, dude, they were a penny a piece. And
Jesus,
I
you might
literally
just buy the whole fucking store at that price.
He was like, there's no fucking room in here for all these movies. I'm like, dude, we got to get them back to Virginia. We got to do it. And that's how it became. I mean, I'll just give you, just so you see, I'm not.
Yeah, I can see it. No, I can see it.
I just want to show you guys something real quick while we're looking. Okay. So you go here. Okay, there's the corner, and it it goes all the way down there.
Yeah.
Then you come over here, and I got my TV going on and everything. Okay, and you come over here, and you see what's going on.
Oh yeah.
It's the whole. This is the smaller. These are the DVD size. When it was VHS, it was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
DVD and VHS.
Yeah, and then when you got to move that shit, it becomes insane. I mean, I had 1,200 VHS tapes to move. I mean, like Jesus Christ, something's got to give. And then I have the DVDs in the sleeves. Then I gotta have I got an Excel spreadsheet with all the movies. Like, okay, I gotta keep track of all the movies I have because I have no fucking clue. What do I have? What I don't? And that's back in the day. Then when Netflix came out, when I upgraded my computer and got DVD burners, it's like, wait a minute, I can get movies from Netflix. Those are going to send me a DVD to my house, and I can just rip it and send it back the next day. That's fucking great. Then it kind of started catching on. Like, how can you go through 3 movies a day? That's not right. But
you wised up before I did. I'm like, I gotta have here. Let's see what I'll pull out here. What is this fucking movie? Look, of all movies, I pull out. Look what it is. Dead of Night.
Nice.
When we were just talking about, like, I gotta have the fucking real deal. I gotta have it. When all I really need, I don't even need that anymore. Like that I just need this. But I mean,
collector's curse. It's real. Yeah, collector's curse.
Trust me, I had over 18,000 records. I'm down to under 2,500 now. I mean, it just, that's what I did growing up. It's just, I'm happy to say that's where my money went. I always say I'd rather have that than fucking drug addiction problems or fucking throwing a tin can, meaning beers. And I got friends that all their money goes to the bar. I'm like, end of the night, they're like $200 tab. I'm like, man, that's 10 really good DVDs, man. 10 like, that's your $20 movies. But hey, I don't tell nobody how to spend their money, but for me, that's what I did with it. And I just that's my house now, and I'm happy to have this shit now. But when it got to the point where I'm like, I got this on DVD, I've got this on VHS, it's on streaming. I mean, that's like, I went to the drive-in a couple of years ago, and someone said, wait a minute, you're driving to Pittsburgh, which is 5 hours from here, to see a movie that's sitting right there on your shelf? Why? I'm like, for the fucking experience, for the fucking fun of it all. And I drove there by myself. It was called Dependable Drive-In. It's in Pittsburgh. I went there by myself. I was the only fucking person there when I went. It was a Sunday night, and I told the lady, how do y'all stay open? There was 5 screens. She's like, it's usually packed. And then I went back another time when they weren't playing something retro, and it was 1408, the movie 1408. And the place had 1,000 people, and you had to call on the snack bar to get your food. So I seen how they stayed in business, but I'm like, this is what I do. I mean, we go all the time. Me and my wife just went last week, and we saw American Werewolf and The Beyond. We drove to Baltimore. The week before that, we were seeing where the fuck did we just saw so many crazy movies, because I'm lucky where we are. There's 12 drive-ins within 3 hours of me.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
And one of them is Mahoning, which everybody knows is the retro one now. And I've seen Boarding House there, which is a shot on video movie this year there. We went up, I mean, we see everything. I just love it. That's what I do these days. Not to get off the topic, but that's what keeps me fucking sane, relax, whatever you want to say. That's my, like, you said you want to get high and watch your TV and stuff. That's me. That's my thing.
No, I get it. Yeah, we got one drive-in around here, and depends. They mostly show, like, one screen will be like R-rated movies, one screen will be more family friendly, because they're facing away from one another. But they also will show, like, the retro stuff. That's where I went to see Zombie.
It's popular again.
That's where I went to see Blood Beach. I mean, like,
oh yeah, I saw Blood Beach. I saw Blood Beach at the drive-in the night it premiered in 1980 at Lee Highway Drive-In, the same one where my mom drove out of Sinbad. It was Blood Beach and Schizoid.
Nice. Yeah.
With Klaus Kinski and Alligator. Remember Alligator?
Oh yeah, Alligator. Yeah,
Alligator
2, the mutation. Yeah. Well, you know what? We're gonna next when we finally can get together as people, you know, when Chop and I get together and when we have our grand stink ball, we're gonna invite you, King.
Okay.
I know you maybe not be able to make it, but what we can do, worst case scenario, we'll do this. We'll do a Zoom and we'll do a Zoom
I'll be there. I'll be
party.
like, I can't really. Can you turn the TV to the left?
Yeah, and we could actually share movies this way. We can actually watch movies via Zoom.
Oh, that's cool.
But
that's cool.
but sometime. But you know what? I think we have covered so many great things tonight.
Yeah. Next thing you know, we'll be talking about our favorite toothpaste.
Crest gel.
It was bubble gum. It was bubble gum, but you can't chew it. Turn into bubble gum.
Pearl drops.
Bubba toothpaste. You remember Hubba Bubba toothpaste?
Yeah, we are the products of our generation, are we not? But King, I want to thank you again for hanging out with us and just talking film and all the things that make us happy, you know, and all the childhood memories that we have and nostalgia and just for hanging out with us, man. I thank you very much.
Absolutely. Fun as hell. You guys are great, man. You know, I'm going to watch those movies. I'm going to watch the Hammer and a couple of Amicus I haven't seen or don't remember seeing. And I'll report back. Mummy goes to the top and Dr. Jekyll or whatever. The doctor, what was it? Dr. Jekyll's
Dr. Jekyll.
Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah.
Okay, the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll and the Mummy go to the top.
Nice, excellent.
You guys watch the fucking Asylum.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find it. Yeah,
Asylum,
and I will send. I'll send it to you over on Facebook. The link for the Satan's Triangle. You guys got to watch it.
Yeah, cool.
Kim
Yeah,
Novak,
definitely.
Doug McClure.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good.
Oh, wow.
That sounds
Three
good.
Simpsons.
Yeah, that's cool because we're gonna you know, next we got one more show in 2 weeks. We're doing our two last shows for the season. We've been doing this for 18 months. We're taking a much deserved break, and we're gonna come back, you know, next year. But I'm gonna look forward to having some downtime because I want to watch some of these movies, man. I got a shit ton of stuff, and I want to watch, you know, just stuff that I haven't seen before. You know, and so, but yeah, when we do more horror stuff next year, you know, we will definitely have you back. And when new Deceased music comes out or more tour news, whatever you want to do, you're always welcome here, King.
I appreciate it. It's just fun. It's just finding the time. I mean, it fell into place tonight, thankfully, because the last time I didn't get to come on. It's running around here. I'm getting ready 3 days till we go on the little tour here. So we're gonna have fun on that. Then I will have we'll have some snowy months. And we'll regroup. We're writing the new record, and I'll come back, and we can do something early.
Yes,
I'm sure I can find the time. Because when it's slow, like I'm always up for doing something. I mean, I just can't shut up. I mean, you've got me all like riled up. You're like, yeah, man, I'm gonna have to go watch Asylum now. I don't fucking watch Asylum.
Nice.
Like, what are you doing? I'm watching fucking Asylum. You've seen that 16 times. Make it 17, baby.
You are a man after our own
Thank you
heart.
guys. And I wish you guys the best holidays and stuff. I'm definitely
thank you. You too. Have a great, wonderful tour.
You too. Appreciate you.
You know,
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna do our little outro. I got rid of it, but that's I know where it's at. So hey, you can get Heavy Metal Horror. You know where we're at. We're on Facebook, Heavy Metal Horror Podcast. We're on Instagram, Montag Lewis, one word. Unsane Radio. You can download full episodes or listen to your device. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. We're also on Roku, Hotel Metal Jam. And if you know someone who'd like our show, tell them about us. This has been Montag, Master of Illusion.
ChopTop.
And King Fowley. And we
Dr.
wish you
Amicus.
Yes. And you've been watching and listening to, all right, King, bring up the horns. Heavy Metal Horror.
This is Doug Helvering, and you have been listening to Heavy Metal Horror, the best podcast that you've never heard before.